All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're going to do something in kind of a different fashion. We're going to be exploring some of the kind of important details that often get overlooked when people are covering a lot of missing persons cases in the true crime world. What set this off was I was out on Danielle Hallen's channel and I saw that she had done a video on the disappearance of Michaela Bali from Canada in Saskatchewan. And nothing against her. I actually thought she did a very good presentation on it. And I was just looking through some of the comments that people were talking about, and it was really about kind of they were just leaving some very insightful remarks. And one of them was talking about in the case of like a missing person, oh, when the case of a potential abduction, rather, if someone is trying to abduct a person, they're just like, she's like, notice to anyone who's ever in that situation, kick, scream, make noise, shout. If you are taken to a different location, the risk of dying in, like, in just like in terms of a statistic is just amplified. And that really got me thinking about all the other different things that we experience in the true crime world. I mean, that's a big one. Like, if someone is trying to get you into a car and take you to another place, some unknown individual, then yes, the risk of foul play is really going to just balloon out of control. Murder and the various forms of homicide, of course, manslaughter and whatever things you would like to attribute to that. But the risk of that happening is so much higher. But when we look at some of the other true crime cases that we've experienced and we've dealt with over the years, you do notice that there are similarities. How many times have we heard about someone going missing after getting into a heated argument with their significant other or a heated argument with a family member? How many times has that happened? And it's almost just like, I don't know about you guys. If I'm ever in that situation, I'm certainly not going to go walking in the woods or something like that because the risk of not coming back seems very high. Also, we've talked about this in the past about people who go missing they after there's sort of auto trouble, car crashes. I mean, the car goes off the road, or even in the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, the truck running out of gas. If you are ever in any sort of kind of vehicular trouble on the road, in any sort of accident, if you leave the scene of an accident and try to go to a different location, the risk of dying is just so much higher. And we see this because we experience this in a lot of missing persons cases. Now, one time though, it's like kind of near my home in West Virginia. My battery died, right? So I just walked back to the house. But this is kind of a substantial thing, like at least a mile. And I walked back. I mean, we're not talking about anything like familiar roads where you know how to navigate. It's more like about how someone's car breaks down, right? And then they decide to walk through a wooded area to try and get to a place to get assistance or something like that. And even possibly in the Maura Murray case, I mean, she possibly got into somebody else's car to get away from the scene. Like, we're not talking about any type of abduction where she would have had to fight and make noise. It would be quite to the contrary. She possibly willingly got into somebody's car to flee the scene and was never seen from again. That's perhaps is the biggest theory going on. But we have some other true crime cases though about like that show some differences with missing persons cases. With the case of Zhang Ying from the Midwest, and that was in 2017 when we were talking about that, where a sort of a kind of an international student from China got into somebody's car because she was running late for an appointment. She stopped to catch her breath, and some guy offered her a ride, and it turned out that was some guy who was just kind of filled with murderous impulses, and she was, of course, indeed murdered. And that case has been solved, and the perpetrator has been apprehended in that one. But it was a missing persons case for a while. With something like that, I mean, do we even need to talk about accepting rides from strangers? Yes, we do. Because that's another thing that is really just, that kind of blows out of proportion when you're dealing with missing persons cases. We just mentioned Maura Murray. That's one of the largest theories in there is that she accepted a ride from a stranger. And you really see this a lot with people who are just, if they're in a tough situation, they just think that someone is volunteering to give them a ride. I've also been given a ride, like I've been also been offered a ride from somebody on the side of the road once, and I took it, and I mean, they aren't exactly going after people like me, but more compared to people like Maura Murray or Zhang Yingying. But maybe I shouldn't have done that. Although it was from a family, they even had a baby in the back seat. Hopefully, they wouldn't go down that road. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, but that's just kind of the risk of that of foul play happening to anybody, and I shouldn't say it so lightly. Even like male, female, it could really balloon out of control if someone is like kind of dealing with getting the rides from strangers. What you really see though is the kind of commonality that is linking a lot of these things together, and we might do a whole presentation on Michaela Bali. Is that people are dealing with a lot of emotional distress. People are dealing with a lot of kind of conflicting feelings, heated tempers, and just heated emotions in general. As we just said about Zhang Ying, that she was kind of running late for an appointment and really stressing out. Even something as simple as that, and people start going off in some unknown area. That's what really pushes up that kind of real risk of some foul play occurring. I mean, so many times we have seen things like that. It's really kind of saddening, but it seems like a major commonality that is linking together a lot of these true crime cases. Another thing is, though, intoxication around bodies of water. And I'm not going to go down the smiley face killers route because I don't necessarily believe that theory completely, that there's this gang of serial killers that is kind of drowning certain individuals. But one of the bigger commonalities around that is when someone is disoriented around a body of water, the risk of drowning is so much higher. But the thing is, though, how does this relate to missing persons cases? Sometimes the person is just not recovered. I mean, and that is a disoriented state of mind. That can be any sort of kind of heated emotional issue going on. That's one of the biggest theories in the case of Brandon Lawson, is that he was very close to the Colorado River and perhaps he drowned and his body was moved to an unknown location that was never recovered, or maybe if it was recovered, it was never identified. I mean, that's like a large theory that's kind of going on. But you see this very clearly from cases like Kaylin Lauder and Elisa Lam. With Kaylin Lauder, which is one we haven't really talked about on this channel before, I mean, someone was kind of experiencing a lot of distress and kind of things related to mental issues. And one of the differences between Kaylin Lauder and Elisa Lam is we have a very clear audio message of Kaylin Lauder and how she sounded before she went missing. And she's even like on video having a conversation with her dog pretty much. And she was found in the Jordan River, and that was in Utah, right? So it's like when people are in a disoriented state of mind, the risk of drowning is so much higher. And that leads to a lot of these missing persons cases. I mean, that's just kind of one of the answers to a lot of them, let alone things like Henry McCabe in Minnesota. But one of the reasons why we haven't covered Kaylin Lauder on this channel is that I believe that there has been a lot of coverage that has been already been done by various other people on the internet, and I don't see that there is an enormous amount of mystery there. I think a lot of it is what we kind of explored, and I don't necessarily believe that there was any foul play in that. But I think that that's kind of been taken care of. But then there's also something such as the case of Elisa Lam, as you saw, that was an incidence of drowning where it's not even near a river or a lake or a pond. That was in a water tank in Los Angeles. So it's just any single water source can be a place for drowning. Actually, just on a side note, that Lisa Lam drowned in a water tank on top of the Cecil Hotel in California, right? The last time I was in a hotel for the first time, well, maybe the second or third time, I was on the roof of the hotel and I saw water tanks, and I was just like, I was like, hey, excuse me, guys, I'll be back later. I just had to climb up and I just had to look, and I was like, huh, they do keep these things open. Apparently, it's common, everywhere in the world that they just leave water tanks, open, unlocked, and that is very, very dangerous. I mean, this case of Elisa Lam says it all, but they're just wondering, like, why aren't those things more secured? And that's just one of the things that we're kind of getting to in life. Life is messy. Life is dangerous. The world is out there trying to destroy you. And just, when when people are in this kind of disoriented state of mind, it is one of the biggest commonalities that we have going on in every one of the examples that we put forward. Of course, we do have things like that are just kind of horrendous abductions that are done very forcefully. Maybe the case of Amber Hagerman, who's holds the namesake of the Amber Alert. That would be something that would be done a little bit more forcefully. And I was even watching a video that someone had posted from somewhere in Central America. I believe it was in El Salvador, but I'm not too sure. Only saying that because the person who posted it was from El Salvador on Facebook. And you just saw this woman that was like with her children in a laundromat, and you just saw this hand reach in the laundromat door and grab one of the babies and pulled them out, and then like the mother chased after them, and she was able to get her kid back, kind of like wrestling the kid away from the perpetrator, and they got this on the CCTV footage. I mean, there are cases of people being abducted in like very, very easily that are not involving the disoriented state of mind. But we're not only talking about abductions here. This is just missing persons cases in general. And I would say that kind of one of the major overlooked things in a lot of media is when people are just kind of in a heated emotional state. When people are in any sort of intense emotional state, the risk of becoming on the missing persons list is astronomical. And it's like that's just kind of a sad fact of life. And that's one of just the big commonalities that we're noticing in a lot of the high-profile missing persons cases. We also have some other examples, like the case of Marcia King, who was previously known as the Buckskin Girl, and she was identified in 2018 as Marcia King from Arkansas. That was one where, like, we talked about that on this channel a lot, and one of the largest theories that myself and another commenter were really discussing was about how she might have been using like long-haul truckers as a way to get across the continent. Like, I mean, I do mean the continent, the USA and Mexico, possibly up to Canada as well, but definitely the USA and Mexico. And she was probably just kind of getting rides from, when people that she was not familiar with. And she ended up being a missing person for 31 years until they were actually able to identify her body, that she was indeed found. She was found dead on the side of the road in Ohio. But it's like, like when we want to kind of examine all of that, I mean, the world is just a really dangerous place, and a lot of the things that we think about the world that are rather safe are definitely not. I mean, just even you just want to think about taking a walk down the street at night or something like that. No, it's just horrendously dangerous. It's really just more like if someone is in a disoriented state of mind when they're doing anything. And like back when I was learning how to drive, and I was 15 years old, and I had my learner's permit, even my mom was just reading to me out of the driver's manual book, like that you prepare for your learner's permit test. She's like, oh, it says you're not supposed to drive if you're having like a very, series of angry emotional events in your life. And I was like, mom, I got it. But like, I should have been listening, because like in many times in life, mom was right. I mean, it's just, those are the types of things where you can sort of see that they do try to kind of drill this into us, but I think it's kind of somewhat overlooked. And like, I don't know about you guys, when we're going through these true crime things, can that be our challenge question for the day? Do you ever notice major patterns in these true crime cases that you're almost just like, what is going on here? It's just like something that we just kind of need to be more aware of as human civilization, goes onward. I mean, definitely the things we've talked about, and I don't mean only like getting rides from strangers. They do drill that one into us when we're kids, but it's like being disoriented around a body of water. No one said a word about that. We're talking elementary school, junior high, high school. No one said a word about anything like that, about being disoriented around bodies of water can lead to a high risk of drowning. Or how about this, that, if you're just ever in sort of kind of like a heated emotional state, to kind of leave the house at night and just go walking by yourself, that has a high risk of kind of leading to some unfortunate event. I mean, that is just such a big commonality in so many of these cases. And I would also say, though, that if I ever get married, I'm getting a prenuptial agreement, so I don't end up on one of those true crime shows where someone has murdered me for insurance policy money. And yeah, like I'm I'm definitely going to kind of keep some of that life insurance stuff secret. I don't want anybody knowing anything about that. And it's just, that's another big thing. Like, that's a horrendously dreadful cycle that you notice with a lot of the, not missing persons cases, but the sort of just homicides of someone's significant other dies, and either they're having an affair with someone and they want a reason to leave their current partner, like the Chris Watts case done 100 times over. He's just one of many. He's just kind of like a drop in the ocean, pretty much, of that sort of example. Or there are people who have like life insurance money, and usually it's a combination of both. And it's just like, I mean, people think that they have this kind of flawless way to manipulate the system, but in reality, look at the missing persons cases. Look how many people are getting away with it. I mean, even something like the case of Amber Tuckero, where we have such clear audio of the alleged perpetrator, but no one can really seem to match the voice to something, or any of the physical evidence in the case of Amber Tuckero has been destroyed. The whole Highway of Tears example. There are just so many ways that things like that can go wrong. And one of the things, though, is that with with the sort of spousal murders like Chris Watts, it's like he commits the murder, but then he stays around because he can't flee town. He's trying to just carry on with life as normal. They stay in the area. With the missing persons cases, almost overwhelmingly, the perpetrator is probably going somewhere else, especially in something like the case of Michaela Bali. However, that ended up, we don't necessarily know all of the conclusions to that case yet. The same as Brandon Lawson or Maura Murray, these things are unsolved. But it's most likely that they've kind of disappeared from the area that they are currently in, and their body isn't just like hidden under a rock or something. Excuse me for being blunt. It's most likely that they are gone from the area in which they disappeared from. So, I mean, that's a big difference that we would see there, and that adds such a larger complication to the mystery, where it's like, we got to find out where they are. Well, that's all for me now, and I guess I've asked the challenge question. Do you ever notice repetitive cycles in true crime? And that's all I have to say, and looking forward to hear your comments, and until next time.